Hi, this is Dr. Aaron Willis, and I'd like to welcome you to our session today on Common Core resources in Active Classroom. We're going to be looking at some of the Common Core state standards and following through to find activities within Active Classroom that support those standards and help to develop student literacy skills in terms of reading and writing. So let's take a jump and go right in. The Common Core standards are found in the back of the ELA standards, and there's just a couple of pages for history social studies. I really like that they're convenient and very short and to the point. They're divided into three main areas: the key ideas and details, craft and structure, and integration of knowledge and ideas. Each one of these can be seen as sort of a different approach to reading. The first three standards relate to the text itself, key ideas and details, so students are digging in and trying to understand the nature of the text itself and how it's structured. Craft and structure is a little bit more about the author. What do authors do in order to create meaning? And the students are then invited to explore what that might look like and to analyze it. And then finally, the integration of knowledge on ideas really falls on issues surrounding the reader. So you have these three components: the text, the author, and the reader. And these standards all combine together to develop student skills in order to get them to be better at reading and evaluating evidence and information, and then being able to draw that information into a written composition. And we're going to see how some of the activities in Active Classroom can help to facilitate that today. The last section down here, number 10, talks about students moving along a text complexity grade band. What this means in effect is that students don't necessarily need to be pigeonholed to a certain reading level at a certain grade. We recognize that there's variability in students' reading levels and the ability to handle text across a range of grades. But the key is to keep moving students along and to offering them stretch activities which force them to read at a level above where they're at the same time that you're offering them readings that help make them feel comfortable. And slowly, by stretching them and giving them enough content, you'll be able to move them up these text complexity bands as they move from 6th grade through 12th grade. Let's go in now and look at Active Classroom and try and figure out how to find the activities that will help support this type of skill development with the students at the same time that they're going to be covering key content areas. So I've logged in here to my home page, and I'm going to go next to Content and Find Activities. Once I'm in Find Activities, I'm going to use the series title pull-down menu, and I'm going to start with this series called Applying Common Core. These are a number of activities that were designed with Common Core standards in mind, and you can see as we've done a search that there's a range of different topics here in U.S. history covering different periods. The Lexile level is ranges here from about 980 up through 1100, so there's some variability between the different lessons and their periods, but that is clearly identified. And then the duration, while it seems like a lot, it's broken down into a number of different individual lessons. So you easily can find lessons in here that students can complete in a single class period. Let's go in and take a look at this one on Manifest Destiny. The overall structure is outlined here in the table of contents. You can see we've got a teacher's guide, some additional handouts that students can use to fill in and keep track as graphic organizers. And then we're going to see these familiar categories again: key ideas and details, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas, and then ultimately some writing activities. So we've got, once again, exploring the text, exploring the author and author intention, and then exploring the interaction of those as the student interprets the content. We can then go on and let's dig in and take a look at one of these lessons. So I have here How Did Davy Crockett Die? And this is a lovely lesson that allows us to look at two different types of narratives, both a primary source and a secondary source. And the students are able to look at those sources and then compare them in terms of the different approaches that are offered and presented. So the first thing, we get a little bit of background information. And then we're able to go in and we are introduced to the first source. The first source is a newspaper article, and the students are asked to read it. I like that it's a short source that's manageable for students, not too much to digest. They can get right into it, and they're asked questions. We can see the first question here appearing, is it a primary or a secondary source? We go on to look at other types of issues about the trustworthiness of the reading. Is this something that that students can rely on? Is this giving a accurate depiction of what actually happened? And now we're going to get a little bit into what's the feeling or the mood that's conveyed. How does the author portray Davy Crockett in the selection? So you see, is he a hero or a villain? And did he die in battle? Or was there some other explanation for his death? The important thing here is that, of course, students are asked to cite evidence in order to prove their point. And this is nice because they can go in, they've got the short text, and they can find those passages and build on that. And this develops that idea of using evidence in order to make an argument. The second source is from a member of the Santa Anna's Army, and it's written as a primary source at the time in the 1830s, but here not published until 1955. So there's some question as to its authenticity, and it also paints a very different picture of Davy Crockett's death. In this narrative, he actually survives the onslaught at the Alamo and is taken prisoner and then executed summarily by Santa Anna's forces. So it portrays a very different image of Davy Crockett. Did he die a hero in the Battle of the Alamo, or did he survive and was he taken prisoner and then killed after the effect? There's questions that are meant to elicit student responses, and I love this one, number 7. Which of the sources did you find more credible? So students are exposed to multiple sources. They realize that there's different points of view, that there's a difference between primary and secondary sources, and they're able to weigh in on the credibility there. So we're trying to develop these types of student analysis skills. As we scroll down to the writing section in the same unit on westward expansion, we've got this very interesting proposition. Should Andrew Jackson be on the $20 bill? The students are offered some background information on the nature of Jackson's military activities, both before he became president and after he was president of the United States. And you see both some of the things that might be considered heroic and other things which might have been considered cruel in terms of how he treated Native Americans, the Trail of Tears, the Indian Removal Act, and then students are asked to weigh in on that. So they get background information. They've got a highly engaging, something that they can relate to, something that they can all see, which is a $20 bill. And then they work together in pairs, each student making an argument for whether Jackson should be on that bill or not, and then students having to support their arguments by working in pairs with their partners. So this develops other Common Core skills like speaking and listening skills, and as well develops 21st century skills like cooperative learning. Another series that I'd like to highlight today are our Common Core assessments. These are available both for U.S. history and world history, and I selected the pull-down menu here to bring up a range of different activities. I'd like to explore the first one that we see here on the screen, the Common Core assessments in world history for the age of exploration. Now, the way these are structured are a little bit different. Remember the 9 standards that we looked at in the very beginning, which take on issues ranging from citing evidence and text structure to comparing documents and understanding point of view. So each one of these numbers corresponds to that particular standard. And we can see here I've gone to number 6, which is the standard to identify aspects of a text and reveal an author's point of view or purpose. So it's very important that the students be able to see the standard that they're responding to so they understand what they're being asked to do and why they're being asked to do that. We have 2 different levels here, what we call a basic level and advanced level. Why is it like this? Well, the basic level covers the grades 6 to 8 standards, where the advanced level requires a little bit more of students and their inspiration of the grades 9 to 12 standards that go a little bit more into depth and ask a little bit more of students. We didn't want to specify these by the grade because we wanted to give you, the teacher, the option in order to be able to decide whether you wanted to use one at a particular, with a particular group of students, regardless of their grade level. Now, in this particular one, we're going to see different narratives about the interaction with the natives as the explorers came to North America. So here you have one document, a primary source from the time, and another document that's also a primary source of the time. Once again, these sources both have similarities and differences in their approaches to the subject. Ultimately, the students are asked to follow up with their assessment questions. In this case, two very different points of view about the native peoples, and they're asked to cite specific details in each document to summarize its point of view about the native peoples it describes. Now, the second selection here is really very interesting because it begins to develop students' understandings that there are literary devices that authors use in order to create a certain point of view. So not only are we asking students to identify a point of view, but here we're introducing this notion of selectivity, that it refers to an author leaving out information, or what do they choose to include? So here the question, how do you think selectivity helps each of these two authors express his point of view? So what did they include? What did they not include in their writing? So here we're giving the students that opportunity to go a little bit deeper in terms of their analysis and understanding the types of things that they might look for. And other of these devices come up in some of the other activities that are organized around this title on exploration. Now, in addition, we have writing activities as well. In this case, the students need to write a brief essay that presents a well-reasoned argument focused on historical content. That's the standard. Students are given scaffolded instructions, how to begin, what to write, how to introduce and support their arguments. And here, they're then presented with a document-based question. Here, the age of exploration brought out both the absolute best and the absolute worst of civilization. Students need to either agree or disagree with the statement, and they can include that here in their exposition. What they're able to use are some of the primary sources that they've been analyzing previously. So this develops much like a document-based question where the students are introduced to different primary sources, given an opportunity to analyze, to deconstruct, and to delve into those sources on a deeper level, and then to tie it all together with a written statement. Now we have another series that I want to highlight called Conquering Close Reading. This is a series that's based on Joy Haycom's well-known writings, A History of Us. In Freedom, A History of Us, she takes the theme of freedom and weaves it through U.S. history through the course of 18 different chapters. As you do a search in the database for Conquering Close Reading, you'll see some of those different titles that come up. I'd like to delve into the one on revolution. Here, we've got several different readings, 5 in fact, that are short and to the point and develop key skills, asking students not to read a large volume of content, but to focus on single sentences and paragraphs in order to tease information out of the text. Let's take a look at this one called The People's War, the first reading. Students are going to use different strategies to gather evidence, develop a word picture, and then write a summary in their own words. The reading, once again, a single paragraph here, high interest, developed by Joy Haycom. She's often known for the way in which she's able to integrate regular people's stories from the time. So we're introduced here to a Molly Corbin, who also went to war with her husband during this time. We get that story, and we get a lot of flavor here in the writing that we're going to be asked to analyze in the questions down below. Once again, students will cite evidence, develop a word picture, and then write a summary of the main points of the reading. At the same time that they're interacting with core content, they're also developing key skills which can be applied to any expository writing. Now, I think this is one of my favorites. Standard number 7, the idea of integrating visual information, charts, graphs, photographs, videos, and maps with other information in print and digital text. Here, the emphasis is on visual literacy, Literacy isn't just about reading words in a narrative. It's about being able to integrate those different types of media in different ways that are meaningful in order for us to interpret the world around us. So what resources do we have to support the idea of visual literacy? Well, one of my favorites are the Peter Menzel photo essays. We have one called Hungry Planet, another Material World, and another called What I Eat. In Hungry Planet, we analyze what people eat in a week's worth of food, and they're all photographed there in their kitchen. But it's not just about looking at the photographs. If we go into the compare and contrast essay for Hungry Planet, we're able to look at comparing these different photos and these different cultures and understanding and making inferences about how the people live, and as well how that relates to the statistics about those countries. So here we've got a chart that gives us statistics for a range of different areas, from the cost of food all the way through poverty and annual health care expenditures, or female or male obesity levels, even life expectancy. Students are then asked in some of the activities, there's of course a whole range of activities, but one activity might be for students to look at the relative rates of life expectancy or obesity and then go into the images themselves and compare between one culture and the next and try and draw inferences about how content within the images might be reflected in the statistics that we read about that culture. So the family from the United States, very different diet here than the family in Ecuador or the refugees in Chad. All of that is reflected back here in this chart. So once again, Hungry Planet gives us that opportunity for students to develop their visual literacy skills and really to compare and make inferences. Now let me show you another thing that you can do in Active Classroom. If we go to Content, Find Activities, we have a pull-down menu to correlate our search to standards. Now we have the option to search for state content standards or Common Core standards. In this case, I'm going to look for 8th grade Common Core standards. I update it. It gives me a list of the standards down below. So here's this one on determine the central ideas or information of a primary or secondary source. If I select this and go down below, it's selected a number of different resources for me. But there's way too many. There's 20 per page, and I have 60 pages here. So there's too much information. When you're doing your Common Core searches, it's really important to narrow it by a specific theme. Here we are in the world of U.S. history, but we can change those themes by going over to global studies and geography, for example, and then our themes change. So say we wanted to see, is there anything that does this for the Middle East? And we can search, and in this case, we don't have anything in that area. Let's go back here to U.S. history and search for Colonial America. So now I'm looking for this Common Core standard to determine the central ideas of information. I'm looking specifically in U.S. history for Colonial America, and now I've narrowed it down, and I still have a lot of content, but I've narrowed it down a little bit. Now I wonder if there's something that I could do, like maybe I want Jamestown in particular. So I put it in here as a keyword, run my search, and I find now quite a manageable number of activities. So I've got, let me sort this, a decision-making activity, 3 readings, a simulation, a study skills activity, and a couple of videos that all support this Common Core standard and help to develop the theme in U.S. history, Colonial America. So you really need to try this. The key thing is to go in to select the standard that you're trying to cover, and then to make sure that you put enough filters in so that you're able to narrow in and find exactly what you're looking for. Those are just a few of the ways that you can use Active Classroom to support Common Core standards. We have a range of other activities and series that support it, like debating the documents, U.S. and world history, or decision-making history, decision-making in U.S. or world history. as well as a range of titles that are in our global studies or our civics areas. Please contact us with any questions. You can reach us help@socialstudies.com, and we can help you find the Common Core resources to meet your needs. Thank you for joining us here today. We hope to see you online.